Hi everybody, Hassan Shariq, regulated Canadian immigration consultant, back with another video on Canadian immigration. In this series of videos, I will talk about various aspects of spousal and common law sponsorship applications which are under the family class immigration streams of Canada. And this is because there's a lot of clients that I have who are in Canada, and usually they come with a lot of queries and questions. A lot of people who are in Canada and they want to sponsor their families, their spouses, the common law partners, or even other people, at times are doing these applications on their own as well. So they're looking for answers. So I thought I'll make a series where people can benefit. And if you are somebody who is in a similar situation and would need professional services, you can get in touch with us as well. So for today's video, I will only focus on the different types of spousal sponsorship applications that you have and some definitions around that. So to begin, in a spousal sponsorship or common law partnership application, there is the sponsor and the PR applicant. Sponsor is the Canadian PR or citizen who is going to sponsor the non-Canadian, and the PR applicant is the person who currently does not have the PR status but is a spouse or a common law partner of a Canadian PR or a citizen. Now, keep in mind that if you are a Canadian citizen, you can submit a spousal sponsorship application or a common law partnership application while being in Canada or while being outside of Canada. This is for Canadian citizens. If you're a Canadian permanent resident, in that case, you must submit such an application only when you are in Canada. If you're outside of Canada and you're a Canadian permanent resident and you get married outside of Canada, you cannot submit a spousal sponsorship application from that country where you're based. You will have to move back to Canada. While you're in Canada, you submit your spousal sponsorship application. Now, you can travel back and forth during the time that this application gets processed, but your residence has to be in Canada. So this is an important distinction that people need to know. Now, looking at the two major categories of spousal sponsorship application. Number one, there is the inland spousal sponsorship application, and then there is the outland spousal sponsorship application. Inland spousal sponsorship application means that the PR applicant or the sponsored person is already based in Canada when the spousal sponsorship application is being submitted. So the situation could be where somebody is in Canada on a visitor visa, or maybe on a work permit or a study permit, like any temporary visa. And maybe somebody came to Canada as a student. They met somebody who is in Canada and is a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident. They fall in love, and then they decided to get married. And now the Canadian PR or citizen, who's the sponsor, is proceeding with a spousal sponsorship application for their partner. So this would be a case of inland spousal sponsorship. Outland spousal sponsorship is where the sponsored person or the PR applicant is outside of Canada. Now, in the beginning, I mentioned that if you're a Canadian citizen, you can be in Canada and outside of Canada to do spousal sponsorship. So to make a spousal sponsorship application as an outland spousal sponsorship, it is not the location of sponsor that matters. The sponsor can be in Canada or outside Canada. It is basically the location of the sponsored person what matters. So just giving you an example, if there is a Canadian citizen and he or she gets married to somebody who's based in, say, Sri Lanka or maybe Philippines or Vietnam or Pakistan, this will be considered as an outland spousal sponsorship because the sponsored person is based outside of Canada. So with these two broad categories, there's another important distinction or aspect that I'd like to mention. that a lot of times there are instances where the non-Canadian person is based outside of Canada, the sponsor is based in Canada, they get married, and then they decide that probably they'll apply for a visitor visa for the non-Canadian person or the PR applicant before the spousal sponsorship, so that the non-Canadian person can travel to Canada, and once he or she is in Canada, they'll apply for an inland spousal sponsorship. Now, this is all possible, even that recently government has announced a policy where they're now giving, if such an instance is there and you can provide the same address, there may be an open work permit granted. But do keep in mind that you have to make this decision after very careful thought. There is always a possibility of a rejection on your spousal sponsorship application, especially if you're doing it on your own and you don't really use some professional services, because spousal sponsorship applications are like they're really exhaustive. There's a lot of forms. Those forms have to be filled in a certain manner. So even if you miss out on a few things, your applications could be refused. If you're submitting an inland spousal sponsorship application and God forbid your application gets refused, you cannot appeal that in IRB, the Immigration Refugee Board. You will have to reapply, which means a lot of time wastage. These days, it's taking months and months for spousal sponsorship applications to be processed. So like maybe 10 months is the average processing time right now for inland spousal sponsorship application. Now, say for instance, you submit an application and after about 8-9 months, it gets refused. You will have to do the whole application all again. You might say that you'll have documents, same documents submitted. Yes, there might be a lot of documents which are similar, but then there are documents which have validity dates. So this could be police certificates from different countries. So if it's been already 6 months or the person has traveled back to that country during this time period, they'll again have to apply for police certificates, and you have to redo the forms as well. So with the distinction, the inland spousal sponsorship application and outlet spousal sponsorship application, people, when they're thinking that they would want to do an inland spousal sponsorship application, they need to be very careful, because that could actually mean that you're letting go the opportunity of a possible appeal in IRB if your application gets refused. A better approach can be that if the sponsored person is outside of Canada, once you submit your spousal sponsorship application, you get the acknowledgement of receipt. That is when you apply for a TRV. Again, that application has to be dealt very carefully, because there's an aspect of dual intent in this, and that has to be dealt very professionally, very carefully. But you could always apply for this and base and in this instance, if the TRV is approved, that is when your spouse could travel to Canada, stay with you in the meantime that the spousal sponsorship application is processed. So that's all from my side for today on the topic of different types of spousal sponsorship applications that are there. Hopefully I've been able to provide some valuable information. For anybody who is doing their application on their own and you have questions and queries, you can post that in the comment section and my team will be happy to get back on that. If the video was of any value, do consider sharing it with others, liking it, subscribing it, and I'll soon be back with another video on Canadian immigration. Till then, take care of yourself. God bless you.